Major Garrett is with us from Charleston, South Carolina. Hey, Major, so you were at the Bush rally yesterday. Could you sense a real difference between that rally with Bush 43 and the previous Jeb rallies? And do you think it's going to make a difference in South Carolina?
First question first. Yes, a huge difference. The crowd was by far the biggest that Jeb Bush has seen here in South Carolina or anywhere else on the campaign trail, for that matter. And there was genuine affection and appreciation for George W. Bush, whose name is still resonant in Republican circles here in South Carolina. Will it make a difference? At the margins, yes, because big crowds and enthusiasm never hurt a campaign. But the fact of the matter is Jeb Bush has a lot of work to do here in South Carolina. Though the Bush name is well regarded and well respected, he still needs a ground game that's worthy of Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is much better organized in this state, and Donald Trump has a commanding lead in the polls. So right now, Jeb Bush finds himself a distant third or fourth, trying to find his way into that top tier, into the conversation here in South Carolina. Time is running out, and the Bush campaign knows that if it doesn't perform well here in South Carolina, it's going to have an even harder time persuading voters that, as Jeb Bush often says, this is a national campaign. It's going to be in all 50 states. If he underperforms here, it's going to be very hard for him to be a credible challenger to Trump or Bush come the March 1st primaries, the so-called Super Tuesday or SEC primaries, in which the vast majority of delegates in the month of March will be determined and allocated.
You know, Major, with all the campaigning moving to South Carolina, we were hearing a lot about, oh, it's South Carolina, it's a little different. It's not as polite. It's going to be a dirtier game. There is a lot of mudslinging and name calling. Trump's now threatening to sue Ted Cruz based on his citizenship. Is this dirtier than usual to you? Or I know you've seen a lot of campaigning and you've seen some dirty tricks. What do you think?
It's just getting started, I assure you. The toughness of this campaign, the nastiness of this campaign is only going to ratchet up the closer we get to Saturday. South Carolina here, they just don't bring one set of brass knuckles. They bring two and a big club right behind them. And they take it to each other with relish. I mean, it is a contact sport. It is nearly a blood sport here in South Carolina to question everything about someone's record, someone's previous life, meaning their past life, their personal issues, things that are true, things that are invented, things that might be true. All sorts of mud is slung in this state, and people don't mind it. They understand this is hardball politics. The stakes are enormous. So I expect the intensity to continue, to intensify, if you will, and all sorts of charges being lobbed either through robocalls. One of the things that they like to do here in South Carolina is stick flyers on windshields at rallies and things like that. Really nasty stuff on personal side of politics. So all of that is going to continue. All the best operatives, all the toughest operatives for all the campaigns are here in South Carolina cooking up a kind of ugly witch's brew of negative politics. So I expect that to only continue, and we'll be sifting through a lot of it between now and Saturday for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, Major, as we look at the background, the genteel background that you have there of South Carolina juxtaposed with what you just said. The question, I guess, is does anyone benefit from this kind of infighting?
So this is a really important question. I've talked to a lot of Republican operatives who are sort of looking at this race from a distance. Some who are involved in the campaigns here, but some who are looking at it with a little bit more of a larger eye to what all the activity here in South Carolina might mean for the eventual nominee. And they were very disturbed by what happened on the debate stage Saturday in this respect. Many Republicans told me, look, there was so much said about Republicans negatively about each other that could, for whoever becomes the Republican nominee, become attack ads for the Democrats in the general election campaign. Now, look, that's always a chance. There's always a risk of that in any tough political campaign. But there is a sense that the negativity, the harshness, some of the personal asides in this campaign may really work against the Republican Party in general come November or the fall campaign, because a lot of this fodder that just gets exchanged between Republicans is being captured by Democrats, and they will use it probably to good effect in the general election.
Major, I want to go back and talk about Donald Trump. You know, earlier he pledged that he would not make a third-party run. But then yesterday it seemed like he was threatening to do that, you know, run as an independent. I'm wondering what you think the likelihood of that is. I mean, he is doing pretty well in the polls and the primaries and the caucuses. So is that an empty threat, do you think?
I think it's becoming kind of a get-out-the-vote maneuver for Trump, meaning I may not run as a Republican if I don't win. So if you want me to be the nominee, show up and vote for me. because this idea, this toying constantly with the idea of an independent campaign is really not a practical matter for Donald Trump. The effort would require so much more on the ballot access side, so much more money. It would be outside of a party infrastructure. And look, Donald Trump says, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, I can unite the party. All the establishment figures, when they see me winning, are calling me up, wanting to write me checks, do all sorts of things. So he functions largely as someone who expects to become the Republican nominee. But when he says this, it's sort of a signal to his voters, look, show up, vote, make me the winner so we can end this conversation. So I think he uses it kind of a tactical get out the vote maneuver more than anything else, because the practical reality is he's leading here in South Carolina. If he wins the South Carolina primary, he is well set up for the March 1st primaries, the biggest contest of all on the Republican calendar, certainly in the month of March. And if he runs the table there, he is really on his way to securing the nomination. So he doesn't need to toy with this idea of running as a third-party candidate. But I do think it's a signal to his voters, hey, anything is possible, so I need you to show up.
Chief White House Correspondent Major Garrett, thank you.
My pleasure.